Yeah.
And so we have to be prepared to go into that kind of depth, and you have to be prepared to explain that.
Yeah.
So I it just, let's maybe leave that one alone for right now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I need to sharpen myself up on the historical stuff like that, and yeah.
Dude, I've learned so much about Passover in the last 2 weeks that I had no idea. There's so much more than just a meal to Passover, and I had no clue. I've just been missing it, and part of that includes the sacrifices at the temple, and so it's very clear to me how little and how unlearned I am when it comes to things regarding Levitical and sacrifice, because I always just breeze past those things.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole week. The whole week of Passover is like sacrifices like crazy. They like every day they would have a certain number and all that. Yeah, it's amazing when you get into stuff like that. It's a lot. The whole week of unleavened bread, there's like there's a lot of sacrifices in almost all the feasts. There's a lot of sacrifices in the Levitical. Yeah, it's amazing what we miss. We just tend to focus only on the night of the Passover and not the week of unleavened bread.
Yeah, I'm working on putting it all on a timeline to make sense of it a little better.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's see here. So all right, we're live, everyone. I'm Brother Doug with the Wakened by Yahuwah Assembly in Yahuwah Almighty and Yahushua Messiah. We're going to continue our Haftarah readings today. I'm going to start us off here with Genesis 44 to 47. And I'll be reading from the Brenton's English Septuagint. Actually, hold on. It might be easier for people if I do this. I know that for some people, the British English is not that good, so I'll use the Complete Apostles Bible here. Okay. And I'll start off. Genesis 44. And Joseph charged the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and put the money of each in the mouth of his sack, and put my silver cup in the sack of the youngest, and plate and the price of his grain. I like how they translate corn as grain there to let you know what the original meaning of corn was in the British language. Okay. It was done according to the word of Joseph, as he said. The morning dawned, and the men were sent away, they and their donkeys, and they had gone out of the city and were not far off. Then Joseph said to his steward, arise and pursue after the men, and you shall overtake them. Say to them, why have you returned evil for good? Why have you stolen my silver cup? Is this not of which my master drinks, and he practices divination with it? You have accomplished evil in that which you have done. Now, I like what Brother Joshua brought up about that last time, that it's very possible that he was just playing the part with Joseph. So that's a very realistic possibility. And he found them and spoke to them according to these words. And they said to him, why does our master speak according to these words? Far be it from your servants to do according to this word. And if we brought back to you out of the land of Canaan the money which we found in our sacks, why should we steal silver or gold out of the house of our master? With whomever of your servants you shall find the cup, let him die. Moreover, we will be the servants to our master. Okay. And he said, now then, it shall be as you say, with whomsoever the cup shall be found, he shall be my servant, and you shall be blameless. And they made haste and took down every man his sack on the ground, and they opened every man's sack, and he searched, beginning from the eldest until he came to the youngest, and he found the cup in Benjamin's sack. And they tore their clothes and laid each man's sack on his donkey and returned to the city. And Yehuda and his brothers came into Joseph while he was yet there, and found the ground before him. And Joseph said to them, what is this thing you have done? Did you not know that a man such as I can certainly practice divination? And Judah said, what shall we answer to our master? Or what shall we say? Or how shall we clear ourselves? Alua has discovered unrighteousness of your servants. Behold, we are slaves to our master, both we and he whom with the cup has been found. And Joseph said, far be it from me to do this thing. The man with whom the cup has been found, he shall be my servant. But as for you, go up with safety to your father. And Yehuda drew near him and said, I pray, sir, let your servant speak a word before you. Be not angry with your servant, for you are next to Pharaoh. Sir, you asked your servant, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we said to my master, we have a father, an old man, and he has a son of his old age, a young one, and his brother is dead, and he alone has been left behind to his mother, and his father loves him. And you said to your servants, bring him to me, and I will take care of him. And we said to him, my master, the child will not be able to leave his father, but if he should leave his father, he will die. But you said to your servants, except your younger brother come down with you, you shall not see my face again. And it came to pass when we went up to your servant, our father, we reported to him the words of our master. And our father said, go again and buy us a little food. And we said, we shall not be able to go down, but if our younger brother go down with us, we will go down, for we shall not be able to see the man's face if our younger brother is not with us. And your servant, our father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and one is departed from me. You said that he was devoured by wild beasts, and I have not seen him until now. If then you take this one also from my presence, an affliction happen to him, by the way, then shall you bring down my old age with sorrow to the grave. Okay, so hell just means the grave. Hell is not the lake of fire. Just want to clear that up there. Okay. Now then, if I go in to your servant and our father, and the boy should not be with us, and his life depends on this lad's life, it shall even come to pass when he sees the boy is not with us, and that he will die, and your servants will bring down the old age of your servant, and our father will with sorrow to the grave. For your servant has received the boy in charge for his father, saying, if I don't bring him to you and place him before you, I shall be guilty towards my father forever. Now then, I will remain a servant with you instead of the lad. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know why I keep getting stupid notifications. Okay. Okay, now then, if I will remain a servant with you instead of the lad, a slave of my master, but let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with us, lest I behold the evils which will befall my father? Okay, so now we're going to go to chapter 45 there. And Joseph could not refrain himself when all were standing by him, but said, dismiss everyone from before me. And no one stood near Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he uttered his voice with weeping, and all the Egyptians heard, and it was reported to the house of Pharaoh. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph, does my father yet live? And his brothers could not answer him, for they were troubled. And Joseph said to his brothers, draw near to me, and they drew near. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now then, do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for Allah sent me before you to preserve life. For this 2nd year there is famine on the earth. There are yet 5 years remaining in which there is to be neither plowing nor mowing. Okay. For Allah sent me before you that there might be left to you a remnant upon the earth, even to nourish a great remnant of you. Now then, you did not send me here, but Allah, he has made me as a father to Pharaoh, and the master of all his house, and a ruler of the land of Egypt. Hurry, therefore, and go up to my father, and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, Allah has made me master of all the land of Egypt. Come down therefore to me, and do not delay, and you shall dwell in the land of Goshen of Arabia. And you shall be near me, you and your sons and your sons' sons, your sheep and your oxen, and whatever things are yours. And I will provide for you there, for the famine is yet for 5 years, lest you be consumed, and your sons and all your possessions. Behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. Therefore report to my father all my esteem in Egypt, and all things that you have seen, and make haste and bring my father down here. And he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept on him, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept on them, and after these things his brothers spoke to him. And the report was carried into the house of Pharaoh, saying, Joseph's brothers have come, and Pharaoh was glad, and his household. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, fill your wagons and depart into the land of Canaan. And take up your father and your possessions and come to me, and I will give you all the possessions of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land. And do charge them thusly, that they should take for themselves wagons of the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives. Take up your father and come, and be not sparing in regard to your property, for all the best of Egypt shall be yours. And the children of Yasharal did so. And Joseph gave to them wagons, and according to the words spoken by King Pharaoh, he gave them provision for the journey. And he gave to them all 2 sets of clothing apiece, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of gold and 5 changes of clothing. Yeah, it sounds like Benjamin was kind of like the Apostle John to Yahusha's, like his relationship to Joseph there. I see a little parallel there, a little favoritism there.
Yeah, well.
And to his father he sent presents at the same rate, and 10 donkeys, bearing some of all the good possessions of Egypt, and 10 mules bearing bread for his father for the journey. And he sent away his brothers, and they went, and he said to them, be not angry by the way. And they went up out of Egypt and came into the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. And they reported to him, saying, your son Joseph is living, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob was amazed, but he did not believe them. But they spoke to him all the words uttered by Joseph, whomsoever he said to them. Or no, my bad, whatsoever he said to them. That's my fault. And having seen the chariots which Joseph sent to take him up, and the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Yasharal said, it is a great thing for me, if Joseph my son is yet alive, I will go and see him before I die. Okay. Next, come on. Stupid thing, come on. Next page, come on. There we go, my sword. All right. And anyone that's not muted right now, please mute yourself while I'm reading, just so there's no background noise. Chapter 46. And Yasharal departed, he and all that he had, and came to the well of the oath, and he offered sacrifice to the Alua of his father Isaac. And Alua spoke to Israel in a night vision, saying, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, what is it? And he said to him, I am the Alua of your fathers. Fear not, go down into Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. And I will go down with you into Egypt, and I will bring you up at the end, and Joseph shall put his hands on your eyes. And Jacob rose from the well of the oath, and the sons of Jacob took up their father and the baggage and their wives on the wagons, which Joseph sent to take him. And they took up their possessions and all their property, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan. They came into the land of Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him, the sons and the sons of his sons with him, his daughters and the daughters of his daughters, and he brought all his seed into Egypt. And these are the names of the sons of Yasharal that went into Egypt with their father Jacob, and Jacob and his sons. The firstborn of Jacob was Reuben, And the sons of Reuben were Hanak, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon were Yamuel, Yamin, Uhad, Jachin, Zuhar, Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. Interesting. The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Yehuda were Unan, Shelah, Perez, Zerah. But and Unan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Perez were Ezron and Yemuel, and the sons of Issachar were Tula, Puvan, Ayub, and Shimron. And the sons of Zebulun were Sered, Elon, Yaleel. These are the sons of Leah, which she bore to Jacob in Mesopotamia of Syria, which pretty much would be like, Babylon, like that area. Mesopotamia, Syria stretches all out to like Assyria and all that. So with Dinah, his daughter, all the person's sons and daughters were 33. And the sons of Gad were Zephion, Haggai, Shuni, Ezbron, Eri, Arodi, Ereli. And the sons of Asher were Yimna, Ishua, Isui, Beriah, Sarah, their sister, and the sons of Beriah were Eber and Machiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to his daughter Leah, who bore these to Jacob 16 persons. And the sons of Rachel, the wife of Jacob, were Joseph and Benjamin. And there were sons born to Joseph in the land of Egypt, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of Heliopolis, bore to him, even Manasseh and Ephraim. And they were sons to Manasseh, which the Syrian concubine bore to him, even Machir, and Machir begot Gilead. And the sons of Ephraim, the brother of Manasseh, were Sutalaam, Ta'am, and the son of Sutalaam was Edom. Interesting. And the sons of Benjamin were Bala, Becher, Ashbal, and the sons of Bala were Gera, Naama, Ehi, Rosh, and Mupim, and Gera begot Ard. These are the sons of Rachel, which she bore to Jacob, 18 persons in all. And the son of Dan was Hushim, and the sons of Naphtali were Yazeel, Guni, Yezer, and Shilim. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to his daughter Rachel, who bore these to Jacob, 7 persons in all. And all the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt, who came out of his loins, besides the wives of the sons of Jacob, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in the land of Egypt, were 9 persons. So you got 66 plus 9. All the sons of the house of Jacob, who came with Joseph into Egypt, were 75 persons. Okay. And he sent Yehuda before him to Joseph to meet him to the city of heroes. Interesting. The fact that you got hero worship probably in Egypt, like it says in Genesis 6, the heroes of old, into the land of Ramesses. And Joseph, having made ready his chariots, went up to meet Israel his father at the city of heroes. And having appeared to him, he fell on his neck and wept with abundant weeping. And Yashar said to Joseph, after this, I will gladly die, since I have seen your face, for you are yet living. And Joseph said to his brothers, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and will say to him, my brothers in my father's house, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been feeders of cattle. They have brought with them their cattle and their cows and all their property. If then Pharaoh calls you and says to you, what is your occupation? You shall say, we, your servants, are herdsmen from our youth now until now, both we and our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen and Arabia. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. So the Egyptians have these weird rules about herdsmen and, you know, handling sheep, is an abomination to them. So very weird law of theirs. And we're going to see some other weird stuff too, if I'm not mistaken, about the Egyptians. We're about to see some other stuff like they can't eat with the Hebrews. Genesis 47. And Joseph came and told Pharaoh, saying, my father, my brothers, their cattle, their oxen, all their possessions have come out of the land of Canaan. Behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and set them before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph's brothers, what is your occupation? They said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both we and our father. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to sojourn in the land, for there is no pasture for the flocks of your servants. For the famine has prevailed in the land of Canaan. Now then, we will dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know that there are among them able men, make them overseers of my cattle. So Jacob and his sons came into Egypt to Joseph, and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, heard of it. And Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, you're in Jacob his father, and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob Baruch Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my life, wherein I sojourn, are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of my life. They have not attained to the days of the life of my fathers, in which days they sojourned, which is true. I mean, if you go to the patriarchs, they're like, practically, in a couple hundreds area, so that's very true what he just said there. And Jacob Baruch Pharaoh and departed from him. And Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt and in the best land in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh commanded. And Joseph gave provision to his father and his brothers and to all the house of his father, bread for each person. And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine prevailed greatly. And the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan fainted on account of the famine. And Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan in return for the grain which they bought, and he distributed grain to them. And Joseph brought all the money into the house of Pharaoh, and all the money failed out of the land of Egypt and out of the land of Canaan. And all the Egyptians came to Joseph, saying, give us bread. Why do we die in your presence? For our money is spent. And Joseph said to them, bring your cattle, and I will give you bread for your cattle. Bring your cattle, and I will give you bread for your cattle, if your money is spent. And they brought their cattle to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in return for their horses. Oh my goodness, stupid stuff. All right. They brought their cattle to Joseph, and Joseph, hold on, sorry about that, guys. And they brought their cattle to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in return for their horses and for their sheep and for their oxen and for their donkeys. Joseph maintained them with bread for all their cattle in that year. And in that year passed, and they came to him in the second year and said to him, must we then be consumed from before our master? For if our money has failed, and our possessions and our cattle brought to you our master, and there has not been left to us before our master more than our own bodies and our own land, we are indeed destitute. In order then that we die not before you, and the land be made desolate, buy us in our land for bread, and we in our land will be servants to Pharaoh. Give seed that we may sow and live and not die, so our land will not be made desolate. And Joseph bought all the land of the Egyptians for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold their land to Pharaoh, for the famine prevailed against them, and the land became Pharaoh's. And he brought people into bondage to him for servants from one extremity of Egypt to the other. Except the land of the priests, Joseph did not buy this, for Pharaoh gave a portion in the way of a gift to the priests, and they ate their portion which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. And Joseph said to all the Egyptians, behold, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Take seed for yourselves and sow the land, and there shall be the fruits of it. You shall give the fifth part to Pharaoh, and 4 remaining parts shall be for yourselves, for seed for the earth. Come on, guys. For the seed for the earth, and for food for yourselves and all that are in your houses. So we see kind of like a foreshadowing, in my opinion, of tithing we're seeing here. Later on, Yahuwah institutes tithing with his people, but you're seeing in Egypt that the people of Egypt had to tithe to Pharaoh. Kind of interesting paradigm there. And they said, you have saved us, and we have found favor before our master. We will be servants to Pharaoh. And Joseph appointed it to them for a ordinance until this day to reserve a fifth part for Pharaoh of the land of Egypt, except for the land of the priests. Here's something else that Yahuwah institutes in the law of Moses that we see even the Egyptians doing, which is kind of interesting. That was not Pharaoh. So there was a portion of the land reserved for their priests. And Yasharal dwelt in Egypt in the land of Goshen. They gained an inheritance upon it, and they increased and multiplied very greatly. And Jacob survived 17 years in the land of Egypt, and Jacob's days of the years of his life were 147 years. And the days of Yasharal drew near for him to die, and he called his son Joseph and said to him, if I found favor before you, put your hand under my thigh, and you shall execute mercy and truth toward me, so as not to bury me in Egypt. But I will sleep with my fathers, and you shall carry me up out of Egypt and bury me in their tomb. And he said, I will do according to your word. And he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. And Israel bowed down, leaning on the top of his staff. So that is the end of our Genesis Torah portion. Now we're going to go to Ezekiel. And I've noticed sometimes there's differences in the prophets, like huge differences. So what I'm going to do on my computer, you guys won't be able to see it, but on my computer here, I'm going to have a little split screen parallel here just to see if there's any differences as we go through the Ezekiel portion. Ezekiel 15 to, I believe it's 15 to 28. Okay. So let me just save my spot here. Let me put it on the screen here so everyone can see on Zoom. Okay, so Ezekiel 37, starting at 15. Okay. All right. And the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Son of man, take for yourself a rod and write upon it Yehuda, and the children of Yasharal, his adherents, and you shall, or your translation might say, his brothers. And you shall take for yourself another rod. You shall inscribe it for Joseph, the rod of Ephraim, and all the children of Yasharal that belong to him. And you shall join them together for yourself, so as that they should bind themselves into one stick, and they shall be in your hand. And it shall come to pass, when the children of your people shall say to you, will you not tell us what you mean by these things? Okay. Verse 19, then shall you say to them, thus says Yahuwah, behold, I will take the tribe of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim. And this is the, yep, so after I read this whole portion, I'll bring up the differences here. Okay, so then shall you say to them, thus says Yahuwah, behold, I will take the tribe of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Yasharal that belong to him, I will add to them, to the tribe of Yehuda, and they shall become one rod in in the hand of Yehuda. So it's talking about bringing them as one kingdom again. And the rods on which you wrote shall be in your hand in their presence. You shall say to them, thus says Yahuwah Elohim, behold, I will take the whole house of Yasharal out of the midst of the nations among whom they have gone, and I will gather them from all that are round about them, and I will bring them into the land of Yasharal, and I will make them a nation in my land. Notice how it says Yahuwah's land, okay? Even on the mountains of Yasharal, they shall have one prince, and we're going to get to later on with Hebrews at the end of today's study about the prince and how that's significant of Melchizedek and all that, but don't want to get too ahead of myself, okay? They shall have one prince, and they shall be two nations no longer. Neither shall they be divided anymore into two kingdoms, that they may no more defile themselves with their idols. And I will deliver them from all their transgressions whereby they have sinned. And I will cleanse them, and they shall be to me a people, and I, Yahuwah, will be to them a Elohim, which actually Paul quotes, I believe, what is it, Mom? Hebrews 8:8, I think he quotes this. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so we'll get to that later. And my servant David shall be a prince in the midst of them. This is where it gets tricky. You have to understand the prophetic language here. He's not referring to David, son of Jesse. He's referring to Yahusha. He's using David as like a title. He's
as the line.
You know, as the line. Well, not just that, Mom. Prophetically, Yahusha is a David. He's
right,
we need to understand this. This is what drives so many people from rejecting the New Testament, because they don't understand Yahuwah's using prophetic language. Okay.
Yeah.
He's not saying David's going to be reincarnated and David's.
Yeah, I thought that when I was reading this.
You got to understand the prophetic language being used here. Okay, so David is referring to Yahusha actually. Okay, there shall be one shepherd of them all, and you can see this in the New Testament everywhere. It talks about I am the shepherd.
Right.
I am the good shepherd. Okay, for they shall walk in my ordinances and keep my judgments and do them. They shall dwell in their land, which I have given to my servant Jacob, wherein their fathers dwelt. They shall dwell upon it, and David, my servant, shall be their prince forever. Plus, if you look at the word my servant in the book of Isaiah, Yahusha prophetically is always referenced to you, my servant, the Messiah, the servant of the Father, the humbling servant. And I will make them a covenant of peace. I see there's two people in the waiting room. Just hang on, guys. Staying there. I'm going to admit you once I'm done. I got 2 to 3 verses left, okay? I will make them a covenant of peace and shall be everlasting with them, and I will establish my set-apart place in the midst of them forever. To me, this definitely sounds like there's another temple going to be built in the millennium in verse 26 here. And my tabernacle shall be among them. I will be to them a Elohim, they shall be to me, they shall be my people, and the nations shall know that I am Yahuwah that sets them apart when my set apart place is in the midst of them forever. Okay, now let me see here. I'm going to go to the Zoom room here because we got a couple people waiting in the meeting room. I'm sorry about that, guys. Admit. Okay, so now I just want to bring up some differences here in Ezekiel before we continue on with my mom. So, all right. And my mom will be reading 2 Samuel for us. But before we go there, let me just take my time here and actually go to back to my shared screen here, because there are some differences here, especially those of you that have been kind of following the studies, the differences studies we've been doing. Okay, so if we go to like the Strong's of the KJV, I think it starts in verse 19. We start seeing a huge difference here. In verse 19, these little tricky little Masorites here, lowercase Lord. When you have lowercase Lord and then it's all caps God, a light bulb should be coming up. Okay, the lowercase Lord is actually Adonai. They put a little Adonai in front of Yahuwah, is what they did. So the lowercase lord H136 Adonai, okay? When it's a lowercase lord, it's not Yahuwah. It's not the H3068. It's actually H136 most of the time. And then for the H3069, which is Yahuwah, the translator put all caps God, okay? So, but if we go to the Septuagint here, hold on, bear with me, guys. My sword wants to glitch today for some reason. Let me go back to the Bible here. Okay, if you go to now the Apostolic Bible Polyglot of verse 19, you will have there will be no Adonai. It will actually say Yahuwah Elohim, actually, or Yahuwah Alua, whatever you prefer. Okay, if we go to so G2962, all caps Lord, in English. Then you have the G2316, which is the Greek Theos, is the equivalent of Elohim or Alua there. So you have Yahuwah Elohim there, Septuagint of Ezekiel 37:19. Okay, so that was the main difference I wanted to point out, and I think it happens multiple times in this chapter. So I just wanted to bring that out before we move on to 2 Samuel. I'm just going to check real quick as I'm doing. I'm kind of multitasking right now. Okay, we got it again in verse 21 of the King James I'm seeing here. So if you go with the King James with the Strongs, this is how you figure it out here. And King James, let's see here. Okay, so you go to verse 21 here, and again, you have the H136 Adonai, and then you have Yahuwah after it. So in the Masoretic, they would have it as Adonai Yahuwah. In the Septuagint, and I'll just check real quick, it should be just Yahuwah or Yahuwah Elohim. According to the Bretons, it would be Yahuwah Elohim, according to the Bretons in that verse. Yeah. Thus says Yahuwah Elohim right here. Okay. So I just wanted to point those differences out, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, this chapter is pretty much the same in both versions, other than the two Adonais being added in by the Masoretic Hebrew sages there. So anyway, so just wanted to point that out. Now I'm going to let my mom go, and she's going to read 2 Samuel chapters 19 to 26. Oh, 24, my bad. Okay, so 19 to 24. Okay, all right, so here we go.
Joab was told, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom, and for the whole army, the victory of the day returned this morning, because on this day, men stole into that day, as men steal into our tomb when they battle. The king comes and cried aloud, "Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son!" Then Joab went into the house to the king and said, "Today you have humiliated all your men. You have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines. You love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and all of us were dead. Now go out and encourage your men. I swear by Yahuwah that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come upon you from your youth till now." So the king got up and took his seat in the gateway. When the men were told, "The king is sitting in the gateway," they all came before him. David returns to Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the Israelites had fled to their homes throughout the tribes of Yisrael. The people were all arguing with each other, saying, "The king delivered us from the hand of our enemies. He is the one who rescued us from the hand of the Philistines. But now he has fled the country because of Absalom." and Absalom, who we anointed to rule over us, has died in battle. So why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Ask the elders of Yehuda, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his palace, since what is being said throughout Yashrael has reached the king at his quarters? You are my brothers, my own flesh and blood. So why should you be in the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my own flesh and blood? May Yahuwah deal with me, be it ever so severely, if from now on you are not the commander of my army in place of Joab. He won over the hearts of all the men of Yehuda as though they were one man. They sent word to the king, return you and all your men. Then the king returned and went as far as the Jordan. Now the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed to the Jordan, where the king was. They crossed at the ford to take the king's household over and to do whatever he wished. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate before the king and said to him, may my lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind, for I, your servant, know that I have sinned. But today I have come here as the first of the whole house of Joseph to come down and meet my lord the king. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said, shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this? He cursed the Lord's anointed. David replied, what do you and I have in common? You sons of Zeruiah, this day you have become my adversary. Should anyone be put to death in Yashrael today? Do I not know that today I am king over Yashrael? So the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king promised him an oath. Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also went down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet or trimmed his mustache or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth? He said, my lord the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said, I will have my donkey saddled and will ride on it so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me, and he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of Yahuwah, so do whatever pleases you. All my grandfather's descendants deserve nothing but death from my lord the king, but you gave your servant a place among those who sat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king? The king said to him, why say more? I ordered you and Ziba to divide the fields. Mephibosheth said to the king, let him take everything, now that my lord the king has arrived home safely. Barzillai, the Gileadite, also came down from Rogelim to cross Jordan with the king, and to send him on his way from there. Now Barzillai was a very old man, 80 years of age. He had provided for the king during his stay in Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, cross over with me and stay with me in Jerusalem, and I will provide for you. But Barzillai answered the king, how many more years will I live, that I should go up to Jerusalem with the king? I am now 80 years old. Can I tell the difference between what is good and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats and drinks? Can I still hear the voices of men and women singers? Why should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will cross over the Jordan with the king for a short distance, but why should the king reward me in this way? Let your servant return, that I may die in my own town near the tomb of my father and mother. But here is your servant Kimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king. Do for him whatever pleases you. The king said, Kimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him whatever pleases you. And anything you desire from me, I will do for you. So all the people crossed the Jordan, and then the king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and gave him his blessing, and Barzillai returned to his home. When the king crossed over to Gilgal, Kimham crossed with him. All the troops of Yehuda and half the troops of Yashrael had taken the king over. Soon all the men of Yashrael were coming to the king and saying to him, why did our brothers, the men of Yehuda, steal the king away and bring him and his household across the Jordan together with all his men? And all the men of Yehuda answered the men of Yashrael, we did this because the king is closely related to us. Why are you angry about it? Have we eaten any of the king's provisions? Have we taken anything for ourselves? Then the men of Yashrael answered the men of Yehuda, we have 10 shares in the king, and besides, we have a greater claim on David than you have. So why do you treat us with contempt? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? But the men of Yehuda responded even more harshly than the men of Yashrael. Now, a troublemaker named Sheba, son of Bichri, a Benjamite, happened to be there. He sounded the trumpet and shouted, we have no share in David, no part in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, O Yashrael. So all the men of Yashrael deserted David to follow Sheba, son of Bichri, but the men of Yehuda stayed by their king all the way from the Jordan to Jerusalem. When David returned to his place in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he had left to take care of the palace and put them in a house under guard. He provided for them, but he did not lie with them. Confinement till the day of their death, living as widows. Then the king said to Amasa, summon the men of Yehuda to come to me within 3 days, and be here yourself. But when Amasa went to summon Yehuda, he took longer than the time the king had set for him. David said to Abishai, now Sheba, son of Bichri, will do us more harm than Absalom did. Take your master's men and pursue him, or he will find fortified cities and escape from us. So Joab's men and the Kerethites and the Pelethites and all the mighty warriors went out under the command of Abishai. They marched out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. While they were at the great rock in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet them. Joab was wearing his military tunic, and strapped over it at his waist was a belt with a dagger in its sheath. As he stepped forward, it dropped out of its sheath. Joab said to Amasa, how are you, my brother? Then Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. Amasa was not on his guard against the dagger in Joab's hand, and Joab plunged it into his belly, and his intestines spilled out on the ground without being stabbed again. Amasa died. Then Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheba, son of Bichri. One of Joab's men stood beside Amasa and said, whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab. Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the middle of the road, and the man saw that all the troops came to a halt there. When he realized that everyone who came up to Amasa stopped, He dragged him from the road into a field and threw a garment over him. After Amasa had been removed from the road, all the men went on with Joab to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. Sheba passed through all the tribes of Yashrael to Abel Beth Makkah, and through the entire region of the Berites, who gathered together and followed them. All the troops of Joab came and besieged Sheba in Abel Beth Makkah. They built a siege ramp up to the city, and it stood against the outer fortifications. While they were battering the wall to bring it down, a wise woman called from the city, "Listen, listen, tell Joab to come here so I can speak to him." He went toward her and she asked, "Are you Joab?" "I am," he answered. She said, "Listen to what your servant has to say." "I'm listening," he said. She continued, "Long ago they used to say, 'Get your answer at Abel,' and that settled it. We are the peaceful and faithful in Yashrael. You are trying to destroy a city that is a mother in Yashrael. Why do you want to swallow up Yahuwah's inheritance?" Or I guess that's David's inheritance, I'm not sure. Far be it from me, Joab replied. Far be it from me to swallow up or destroy. That is not the case. A man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the hill country of Ephraim, has lifted up his hand against the king, against David. Hand over this one man, and I'll withdraw from the city. The woman said to Joab, "His beard will be thrown to you from the wall." Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off the head of Sheba, son of Bichri, and threw it to Joab. So he sounded the trumpet, and his men dispersed from the city, each returning to his home. And Joab went back to the king in Jerusalem. Joab was over Yashrael's entire army. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the Karatites and Peletites. The Adoniram was in charge of forced labor. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was recorder. Shiva was secretary. Zadok and Abiathar were priests. And Ira the Jairite was David's priest. Okay. During the reign of David, there was a famine for 3 consecutive years. So David sought the face of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah said, "It is on account of Saul and his blood-stained house. It is because he put the Gibeonites to death." The king summoned the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not a part of Yashrael, but they were survivors of the Amorites. The Israelites had sworn to spare them, but Saul, in his zeal for Yashrael and Yehuda, had tried to annihilate them. David asked the Gibeonites, "What shall I do for you? How shall I make amends so that you will bless Yahuwah's inheritance?" The Gibeonites answered him, "We have no right to demand silver or gold from Saul or his family, nor do we have the right to put anyone in Israel to death. What do you want me to do for you?" David asked. They answered the king, "As for the man who destroyed us and plotted against us, so that we have been decimated and have no place anywhere in Yashrael, let 7 of his male descendants be given to us to be killed and exposed before the Lord at Gibeah of Saul, the Lord's chosen one." So the king said, "I will give them to you." The king spared Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of the oath before Yahuwah between David and Jonathan, son of Saul. But the king took Armoni and Mephibosheth and 2 sons of Aiah's daughters, Ritzpah, whom she had borne to Saul, together with the 5 sons of Saul's daughter Merab, whom she had borne to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Meholotite. He handed them over to Gibeonites, who killed and exposed them on a hill before the Lord. All 7 of them fell together. They were put to death during the first days of the harvest, just as the barley harvest was. Ritzpah, daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on a rock. From the beginning of the harvest till the rain poured down from the heavens on the bodies, she did not let the birds of the air touch them by day, or the wild animals by night. When David was told what Aiah's daughter Ritzpah, Saul's concubine, had done, he went and took the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from the citizens of Jabesh Gilead. They had taken them secretly from the public square at Beth-shan, where the Philistines had hung them after they struck Saul down on Gilboa. David brought the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from there, and the bones of those who had been killed and exposed were gathered up. They buried the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan in the tomb of Saul's father Ish at Zelah in Benjamin, and did everything the king commanded. After that, Yahuwah answered prayer in behalf of the land. A war against the Philistines. Once again, there was a battle between the Philistines and Yashrael. David went down with his men to fight against the Philistines, and he became exhausted. And Ishbi Benob, one of the descendants of Rapha, whose bronze spearhead weighed 300 shekels, and who was armed with a new sword, said to kill David. But Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue. He struck the Philistine down and killed him. Then David's men swore to him, saying, "Never again will you go out with us to battle, so that the lamp of Yashrael will not be extinguished." In the course of time, there was another battle with the Philistines at Gob. At that time, Sibbecai, the Hushathite, killed Saph, one of the descendants of Rapha. In another battle with the Philistines of Gob, Elbanan, son of Jaare Oregim, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath, the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. In still another battle, which took place at Gath, there was a huge man with 6 fingers and toes. He also was descended from Rapha. When he sorted Yashrael, Jonathan, son of Shimeah, David's brother, killed him. These 4 were descendants of Rapha in Gath, and they fell at the hands of David and his men. David, a song of praise. David sang to Yahuwah the words of this song. When Yahuwah delivered him from the hand of all his enemies, from the hand of Saul, he said, "Yahuwah is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer. My Elohim is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation. He is my stronghold, my refuge and my savior. From violent men you save me. I call to Yahuwah, who is worthy of praise, and I am saved from my enemies. The waves of death swirled about me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called to Yahuwah. I called out to my Elohim. From his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came to his ears. The earth trembled and quaked. The foundations of the heavens shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared out. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, bolts of lightning blazed forth. Yahuwah thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot arrows and scattered the enemies, bolts of lightning and routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth lay bare. At the rebuke of Yahuwah, at the blast of breath from his nostrils, he reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but Yahuwah was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. Yahuwah has dealt with me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands. He has rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of Yahuwah. I have not done evil by turning from my Elohim. All his laws are before me. I have not turned away from his decrees. I have been blameless before him and have kept myself from sin. Yahuwah has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his sight. To the faithful you show yourself faithful. To the blameless you show yourself blameless. To the pure you show yourself pure, but to the crooked you show yourself shrewd. You save the humble, but your eyes are on the haughty to bring them low. You are my lamp, O Yahuwah. The Elohim turns my darkness into light. With your help, I can advance against the truth. With my Elohim, I can scale a wall. As for Yahuwah, his way is perfect. The word of Yahuwah is flawless. He is a shield for all who take refuge in him. For who is Yahuwah besides the Elohim? And who is the rock except our Elohim? It is Yahuwah who arms me with strength and makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to stand on the heights. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. You give me your shield of victory. You stoop down to make me great. You broaden the path beneath me so that my ankles do not turn. I pursued my enemies and crushed them. I did not turn back till they were destroyed. I crushed them completely, and they could not rise. They fell beneath my feet. You armed me with strength for battle and made my adversaries bow at my feet. You made my enemies turn their backs in flight, and I destroyed my foes. They cried for help, but there was no one to save them. To Yahuwah, but he did not answer. I beat them as fine as the dust of the earth. I pounded and trampled them like mud in the streets. You have delivered me from the attacks of my people. You have preserved me as the head of nations. People I did not know are subject to me, and foreigners came cringing to me. As soon as they hear me, they obey me. They all lose heart. They come trembling from their stronghold. Yahuwah lives. Praise be to my rock. Exalted be Yahuwah, the rock, my savior. He is the Elohim who avenges me, who puts the nations under me, who sets me free from my enemies. You exalted me above my foes. From violent men you rescued me. Therefore I will praise you, O Yahuwah, among the nations. I will sing praises to your name. He gives his king great victories. He shows unfailing kindness to his anointed, to David and his descendants forever. Chapter 23, the last words of David. These are the last words of David, the oracle of David, son of Jesse, the oracle of the man exalted by the Most High, the man anointed by the Elohim of Jacob, Yisrael, singer of psalms. The spirit of Yahuwah spoke through me. His word was on my tongue. The Elohim of Yisrael spoke. The rock of Yisrael said to me, when one rules over men in righteousness, when he rules in the fear of Yahuwah, he is like the light of morning at sunrise, on a cloudless morning, like the brightness after rain that brings the grass from the earth. Is not my house bright with Yahuwah? Has he not made with me an everlasting covenant, arranged and secured in every part? Will he not bring to fruition my salvation and grant me my every desire? But evil men are all to be cast aside like thorns, which are not gathered with the hand. Whoever touches thorns uses a tool of iron or the shaft of a spear. They are burned up where they lie. David's mighty men. These are the names of David's mighty men. Joshab Bahashabeth, Takamanite, was the chief of the three. He raised his spear against 800 men, whom he killed in one encounter. Next to him was Eleazar, son of Dodai, the Ahohite. As one of the three mighty men, he was with David when they taunted the Philistines gathered at Pas Danit for battle. Then the men of Yisrael retreated, but he stood his ground and struck down the Philistines till his hand grew tired and froze to the sword. The Lord brought about a great victory that day. The troops returned to Eleazar, but only to strip the dead. Next to him was Shammah, son of Agi the Hazarite. When the Philistines banded together at a place where there was a field full of lentils, Yisrael's troops fled from them. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it and struck the Philistines down. And Yahuwah brought about a great victory. During harvest time, 3 of the 30 chief men came down to David at the cave of Adullam, while a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. At that time, David was in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was at Bethlehem. David longed for water and said, "Oh, that someone would give me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." So the 3 mighty men broke through the Philistine lines, drew water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem, and carried it back to David. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before Yahuwah. "Far be it from me, O Yahuwah, to do this," he said. "It is not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives." And David would not drink it. Such were the exploits of the 3 mighty men. Abishai, the brother of Joab, son of Zeruiah, was chief of the 3. He raised his spear against 300 men, whom he killed, and so he became as famous as the 3. Was he not held in greater honor than the 3? He became their commander, even though he was not included among them. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was a valiant fighter from Kabzeel, who performed great exploits. He struck down 2 of Moab's best men. He also went down into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. And he struck down a huge Egyptian, although the Egyptians had a spear in his hand. Benaiah went against him with a club. He snatched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. Such were the exploits of Benaiah son of Jehoiada. He too was as famous as the three mighty men. He was held in greater honor than any of the 30, but he was not included among the three. And David put him in charge of his bodyguard. Among the 30 were Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elihanan, son of Dodo from Bethlehem, Shammah the Harodite, Elika the Harodite, Pelez the Palatite, Ira son of Ikesh from Tekoa, Abiezer from Anothoth, Mebunai the Hushatite, Zalman the Ahathite, Mariah the Netophathite, Heled son of Barias from Netophathite, Ittai son of Ribal from Gibeah of Benjamin, Benaiah the Parathonite, Hiddai from the ravines of Gash, Abai Alban the Abatite, Azamaveth the Barhumite, Alaba the Shalbanite, the sons of Jashen, Jonathan son of Shammah from Haratite, Abiam son of Sharar the Hararite, Eliphalet son of Abishai the Maccatite, Eliam son of Abithophel the Gilonite, Hezro the Carmelite, Parai the Arbite, Egal son of Nathan from Zobah, the son of Hagri, Zelek the Ammonite, Naharai the Beerotite, the armor bearer of Joab, son of Zeruiah, Ira the Itrite, Gareb the Ithrite, and Uriah the Hittite. There were 37 in all. David counts the fighting men. Again, the anger of Yahuwah burned against Yashrael, and he incited David against them, saying, "Go and count Yashrael and Yehudah." So the king said to Joab and the army commanders with him, "Go throughout the tribes of Yashrael, from Dan to Beersheba, and enroll the fighting men, so that I may know how many there are." But Joab replied to the king, "May the Lord your God multiply the troops 100 times over, and may the eyes of my lord the king see it. But why does my lord the king want to do such a thing?" The king's word, however, overruled Joab and the army commanders, so they left the presence of the king to enroll the fighting men of Yashrael. After crossing the Jordan, they camped near Aror, south of the town in the gorge, and they went through Gad and on to Jazer. They went to Gilead, the region of Tatim, Hadshi, and on to Dan, John, and around toward Sidon. Then they went toward the fortress of Tyre and all the towns of the Hivites and Canaanites. Finally, they went on to Beersheba in the Negev of Yehudah. After they had gone through the entire land, they came back to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. Joab reported the number of the fighting men to the king. In Yashrael, there were 800,000 able-bodied men who could handle a sword, and in Yehudah 500,000. David was conscience-stricken after he had counted the fighting men, and he said to Yahuwah, "I have sinned greatly in what I have done now. O Yahuwah, I beg you, take away the guilt of your servant. I have done a very foolish thing." Before David got up the next morning, the word of Yahuwah had come to Gad the prophet, David's seer. "Go and tell David, this is what Yahuwah says. I am giving you 3 options. Choose one of them for me to carry out against you." So Gad went to David and said to him, "Shall there come upon you 3 years of famine in your land, or 3 months of fleeing from your enemies while they pursue you, or 3 days of plague in your land? Now then, think it over and decide how I should answer the one who sent me." David said to Gad, "I am in deep distress. Let us fall into the hands of Yahuwah, for his mercy is great. But do not let me fall into the hands of men." So Yahuwah sent a plague on Israel that from that morning until the end of the time designated, and 70,000 of the people from Dan to Beersheba died. When the angel stretched out his hand to destroy Jerusalem, Yahuwah was grieved because of the calamity and said to the angel who afflicted the people, enough, withdraw your hand. The angel of Yahuwah was then at the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. When David saw the angel who was striking down the people, he said to Yahuwah, I am the one who has sinned and done wrong. These are but sheep. What have they done? Let your hand fall upon me and my family. David builds an altar. On that day, Gad went to David and said to him, go up and build an altar to Yahuwah on the threshing floor of Abranah the Jebusite. So David went up as Yahuwah had commanded through Gad. When Araunah looked and saw the king and his men coming toward him, he went out and bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. Araunah said, why has my lord the king come to his servant? To buy your threshing floor, David answered, so I can build an altar to Yahuwah that the plague on the people may be stopped. Araunah said to David, let my lord the king take whatever pleases him and offer it up. Here are oxen for the burnt offering, and here are threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. O king, Araunah gives all this to the king. Araunah also said to him, may the Lord your God accept you. But the king replied to Araunah, no, I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to Yahuwah my Elohim burnt offerings that cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen and paid 50 shekels of silver for them. David built an altar to Yahuwah there and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then Yahuwah answered prayer in behalf of the land, and the plague on Yashrael was stopped. I'll get you for that, Douglas.
You did great, Mom.
Oh.
Yeah. So let's see here. I have a little bit of notes here. That was interesting in verse 27 of chapter 19. It says that you are as the angel of Elohim. I thought that was pretty interesting. A guy calling King David as the angel of Yahuwah. So that's kind of interesting. A little correlation between him and Yahusha there. Let's see here. And I see a pattern of that. I see a comparing between Yahusha and David here so far for our Haftarah reading today. We're seeing already a couple of correlating meanings here. And it says 2 Samuel 19:27, he has dealt deceitfully with your servant to my master the king. But my master the king is as an angel of Elohim, and do you that which is good in your eyes. And if I think even this is where actually the Masoretic is a little bit stronger for this connection. Oh no, okay, it just says an angel. Okay, sometimes it will say the angel of Yahuwah or the angel of Elohim. Okay, all right, so maybe that connection is not there, but I kind of saw it as a connection to Yahusha pre-incarnate there. Let's see here. Chapter 20, verses 1 and 22. I thought it was interesting that the Masoretic in verse 1 of chapter 20. Let me see here. Yeah. Let's see, it says, I think it says shofar here, where, yeah. Even though the King James translates it as trumpet, which I do agree with, that it should be trumpet there. But unfortunately, the Masoretic text would have you believe, according to the BDB, ram's horn, shofar. The thing is, if you go to the Septuagint, that word does not mean shofar. I mean, that word does not mean ram's horn if you go to the Septuagint here. This is the same word as, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on, let me see here. How do they do this here? Yeah, here we go. G4536, salpix, which means a trumpet. Does not mean a ram's horn. So again, the Septuagint clearly shows here's the same exact word being used as in Numbers 10, which is the silver trumpet, and that's used in 2 Samuel chapter 20, verse 1. And if I'm not mistaken, it's also in verse 22 of this chapter. Okay, where it talks about blowing again, talks about, let's see here, scatter. Yeah, he trumpeted, which that's a related word. Okay, here we go. Here's the horn here. Yeah, very strange that they put the karaz again. But yeah, that's a very weird thing. They put karaz there, even though the word before it is the sound of blowing these salpinks. So it's G4537 is directly related to the G4536. So it's talking about the sound of the silver trumpet. So yeah, karaz, that's a little what's the word I'm looking for? That's a little weird that they would put karaz there after that. That kind of makes no no sense in context anyway. Anyway, the verse 1 of this chapter gives you the context anyway that they're blowing a silver trumpet. So if you go to verse 1, it's salpinks, the G4536. So anyway, but I just thought to point those out. Let's see. Another thing I thought was interesting in this same chapter here is mentioning Zadok, the priest. This is like one of the first times I've seen so far Zadok being mentioned as a priest at that time. So, and how later on we'll see, and later on in this half-Torah reading, we'll see the significance of that, and his descendants end up replacing the Levites at some point in the Old Covenant. So very interesting there. So let's see here. I think that's all I really had because my mom did a great job in reading that pretty quickly. So I didn't really get a chance to get any other things that really would have been brought out or any huge differences. So I think we can move on here. Oh, hold on. Actually, you know what? Chapter 22, verse 18. Let me correct myself here. There is another interesting thing to note. The Septuagint has Rapha. Says actually Hushamite, the Saphs of the sons of Rapha. What's interesting is the Hebrew word Rapha is translated in your Bibles as the dead, but it's actually referring to the spirits of the giants when you see the suffix Rapha for Raphaim in the Masoretic Hebrew. So it's kind of interesting. The Septuagint, verse 18 of 22, if I'm not mistaken, or chapter 21. Let me see. Yeah, chapter 21, verse 18 is actually keeping the Hebrew transliteration there of Rapha, and the ISR of the Masoretic actually says sons of the giant. So again, Rapha means giant or spirits of the giants, dead spirits of the dead giants when referring to, when it talks about congregation of the dead. A better translation of that word Rapha would mean congregation of the departed spirits. So anyway, we've done a study on that. I don't want to dwell too much on that concept because we've already done a study about what demons are. Okay, so anyway.
I just wanted to say what a beautiful chapter that 22nd chapter is of David's song. I almost broke down by the time I got to the end of it. It's just a beautiful, beautiful chapter of praise.
There's one other thing in here, Doug, that we read over.
Yep, go ahead, Brother Jeff.
I'm sure there's a lot, but there's one thing that I noticed, and this is why I was saying, because you wanted to talk about sacrifice earlier in First Chronicles 21, verse 26. It says that David built an altar. I'm in the Septuagint. First Chronicles 21, verse 26. Which we can go to start at, you can start at 24. And it says, and King David said to Ornah, nay, for I will surely buy it for its worth in money, for I will not take the property for Yahuwah to offer a whole burnt offering to Yahuwah without cost to myself. David gave to Ornah for his place 600 shekels of gold by weight, and David built there an altar to Yahuwah and offered up whole burnt offerings and peace offerings. And he cried to Yahuwah, and he answered him by fire out of heaven on the altar of whole burnt offerings, and it consumed the whole burnt offering. So we can see David, this is well after the commands given to Moses and to the Levites. Obviously, there's no temple because Solomon's going to be building it. But we see him setting up an altar to offer whole burnt offerings. And what we also see, though, from David, if you go to Psalms, like it's 51 in the Septuagint, he also says these words. He says, for if thou desired sacrifice, I would have given it. Thou will not take pleasure in whole burnt offerings. Sacrifice to Yahuwah is a broken spirit. A broken and humbled heart Yah will not despise. And in the last verse it says, then shall thou be pleased with a sacrifice of righteousness, offering and whole burnt sacrifices. Then shall they offer calves upon thine altar. So he's talking about the heart of the man being right and it being worthless, basically, to do it with the wrong heart. So we see him saying these words in Psalms 51, but we also see him in Chronicles doing exactly the thing it seems like he's speaking against. But he's just drawing the picture that it's about the person's heart. And there's further proof of this in Isaiah 66, when Yahuwah returns for us. It says that, hold on one second, let me find it. Oh yeah, it says right here, in Isaiah 66 verse 20, it says, and they shall bring your brethren out of all nations for a gift to Yahuwah with horses and chariots and litters drawn by mules with awnings to the holy city Jerusalem, said Yahuwah, as though the children of Israel should bring their sacrifices to me with psalms into the house of Yahuwah. Right? He says they're going to bring sacrifices into the house. In Isaiah 56, it says, even also in Isaiah 56, starting in verse 6, it says, also the sons of the stranger that join themselves to Yahuwah to serve him, to love the name of Yahuwah, to be his servants, everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it and taketh hold of my covenant, even them will I bring to my set apart mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. And then it's further backed up in Jeremiah 33, verse 17. For thus says Yahuwah, David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel. Neither shall the priests, the Levites, want a man before me to offer burnt offerings and to kindle meat offerings and to do sacrifice continually. So this is all speaking of a future promise, something coming later. You know, this isn't, it's not something that's been completely done away with, you know, if you will. So that's why I say there's definitely some further study to be done, because there's still a lot of points, at least I need to reconcile in my own mind about this, because there's a lot of details to it.
Yeah.
It really
But can you see what I'm saying about how David's offering a calf as a burnt offering, and he's not taking it to the priest?
Yeah.
Right. And it's after the command given, you know?
Yeah.
So that I think it would behoove us to learn the difference between these things. and to really put some time into understanding what they mean and what they are. Because I've skipped over them, bro. I'm guilty. I've totally skipped over them and not paid as much attention to them as I should.
I do know that Yahuwah sometimes, even in times before the Levitical priesthood, he did allow allowances for exceptions like that. Like he talks about, 12 up until this day, I've allowed you to, sacrifice to me wherever. And I think sometimes Yahuwah gives allowances, even post Levitical priesthood, where they just can't do that and they still need to give whole burnt offerings and stuff like that. I forget what book I read it in, but it talked about, I think it was the temple wasn't fully built yet when they came back from captivity. And it talks about that they kept the Passover to Yahuwah and sacrificed the sacrifices, before the temple was fully built, when they came back from captivity. So I think it's important to remember too that Yahuwah he can give allowances if he wants. If there's a extreme circumstance
The circumstance I'm talking about is the sacrificial system doesn't seem to be done away with Messiah, because it seems as Melchizedek, he's the one offering sacrifices. So clearly there's something still going on there that's worth our attention.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. There's definitely something going on there. I don't know too much about it because it's really not expressed much in the New Testament as far as the what he's actually doing up there. We know that he's our intercessor and all that, but yeah, there's definitely gonna be. I think we can easily show, though, the coming back of the Levitical system is pretty easy to show in prophecy and all that, and the whole burnt offerings and all that. And yeah, so I do agree with you, though. It's a good thing to study out and try to figure out the difference between the whole burnt offerings and I remember reading something about there are certain sacrifices that the regular Israelites could bring, themselves and stuff like that. So yeah, that is a good thing to study on. Yeah.
The Messiah was an atonement. The Messiah as the lamb was an atonement offering for sin. That's a separate kind of offering than the Passover, which is a whole burnt offering. It's meant to be put on the fire whole. It's an offering, not so much a atonement sacrifice. But when we get into the details, you're going to see that there's a goat that they attach their sins to at about the same time, and it's part of the offering. It's part of the offerings as well. But there's a lot of details in here, man, that I'm just now coming to notice that I've been cramming a bunch of stuff together and not putting any difference in between it. And there's a whole world of things going on that I just haven't paid attention to when it comes to offerings.
Yeah.
There's surface understanding.
Yeah, it's very purposeful to understand it, because when he comes back, we're gonna need to know, what our part is in the sacrificial system. So it is something very important to understand even right now. So when he does come back, we as his people will understand what we need to do, what our part is of it. We kind of been taught that, it's just Levites and that we have no part in it. That we don't have to worry about it because we're not Levites, but it was like all connected in the Levitical priesthood. If you really study out all the different sacrifices, it's all connected. Like the people would have to bring the animal to the Levite, even the ones that the Levites had to sacrifice, the people had a part. And so it was like a whole big system of all the Israelites working together with offering the whole burnt offerings, the peace offerings and stuff like that throughout the feast, like we talked about earlier off the record. The week of unleavened bread, there's a lot of whole burnt offerings and peace offerings and so on and so forth. And the week of tabernacles, if I'm not mistaken, it's the same thing. There's a lot of sacrifices. There's sacrifices like almost every day of that feast. So yeah, it's something very important to study, and I agree 100%. Is something very important to understand the differences with each sacrifice. So I just saw something. Let me see here. I saw chapter 22. I swear I saw something interesting. Let's see here. Oh yeah, verse 7. He shall hear my voice out of his temple. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is pre this would be pre-Solomon. This would be before Solomon's building a temple for him. So this is kind of interesting. This is showing us here that David even understands that his true temple is up there in the highest heaven. So 2 Samuel 22:7 was pretty interesting to me. You will hear out of his temple, and my cry shall come into in his ears, meaning his prayer would go up to heaven to where Yahuwah's true temple is. So thought that was interesting. And let's see here. Other than that, I don't think there was anything that really drawn out to me what my mom read. Obviously, we see the connection of Yahusha and David a lot with our readings so far for today. I'm seeing it anyway. I'm seeing even a connection with Yosef and Yahusha. So I think we're going to continue now. Let's see who our next reader is. What I'm going to do actually, I'll stop the live so that these recordings are not going to get too long. Brother Joshua, I wrote it down. So if you want to know what chapter the First Chronicles cross references, it's in the LXXE. It would be 21 verse 26. So I just noticed there's something in the chat there. So, okay. All right. So let me just end this live and start a new live, and we're going